Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast. We Club. We also have Teslin Figaro with us this morning, and we have a special guest, Dr. Cornel West. Welcome, brother.
Oh, y'all blessing me in this consecrated space, all this rich spirit and stories and narratives and laughter, and you all deal with some serious issues too. And to have our dear sister here, though, indeed, Sister Teslin, it's a blessing.
How you feeling, brother?
Blessing to have you here, brother. How you feel today?
Oh, I'm still swinging, man.
Yes, sir.
I'm still swinging. Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing, you know what I mean?
and you swinging because you are running for president. So tell the people, why did you decide to go through that strenuous and stressful thing?
Well, you know, my brother, I've been running for truth and justice for all my life, though, man. So this is just another context, another moment that we got to be true to the best of all the love and care and integrity that been put inside of us, man. For me, that's Irene Clifton West. That's Mom and Dad. That's Shiloh Baptist Church on the chocolate side of Sacramento. That's the Black Panther Party. We set the highest standards of integrity, honesty, decency, but most importantly, courage. That got to break the back of fear. We got too many folks running around scared and intimidated and kowtowing, you see. And that's what I've always tried to do. So running for president is just a particular moment in a larger calling of running for truth and justice. If we had some folk really talking about mass incarceration, really talking about decrepit schools, really talking about unemployment, underemployment, really talking about the ways in which black folk are still subjugated, then I wouldn't need to run. I could just kick it back, go back into the studio and make another record with Sly Stone. You know, we just dropped one on Friday with Destiny. With Sly. And Sly, you know, Sly for me is one of the great artistic heroes of our time, as is James Ntume. I want to salute Brother James Ntume, a Glenn Ford, a revolutionary black journalist, a Bell Hooks herself. So when I come into a space like this, I feel at home because you all been wrestling with the same issues week in and week out. And it's a beautiful thing to be here.
Happy to have you here, brother. You know, I see that the Democrats and a lot of progressives are saying they wish you wouldn't run, saying that your presidential bid could cripple President Biden's potential run. How does that feel to be that kind of threat, to be that kind of disruptor?
Well, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, though. That's what it means to be a servant of the people. You see that Harriet Tubman was a threat to the white supremacist order. Frederick Douglass was a threat. That's why he put a bounty on his head. Ida B. Wells was a threat against lynching and American terrorism, Jim and Jane Crow. That's why they put a bounty on his head. Martin King, Fannie Lou Hamer, they were threats. And what does it mean to be a threat? What it means to be a threat is you calling into question an order that's predicated on too much suffering of precious everyday people. Now, the funny thing for me is, you know, here it is. I haven't had one public event. I haven't had one fundraiser. And they say I'm a threat and a menace to the constitutional order. I say, yeah, that's what I need to be doing. That's precisely what I need to be doing, you see. Because the Constitution was pro-slavery in practice for 75 years. It's pro-Jim and Jane Crow in practice for 100 years. These days, the new Jim Crow. I always begin, as a Christian, I begin with the least of these. Which means I look at the world through the lens of my partners who incarcerated. I've been blessed to teach in prisons for 41 years. Now, I asked the Democrats, what are you doing about mass incarceration? Biden, you was an architect of it with a white supremacist named Thurman.
That's right.
Was strong. What are you doing about mass incarceration? I want to know. If you're not doing about it, how am I spoiling your votes? You're not speaking to the needs of my people. You're not speaking to the needs of those who are suffering.
Right.
So I'm not a spoiler. I'm casting a spotlight on that which you don't want to come to terms with. If you were really concerned about the issues I'm concerned about, then steal my thunder. Be on the cutting edge of eliminating mass incarceration. Be on the cutting edge of abolishing of poverty, abolishing homelessness. And we were just talking about beloved wife Anahita here, the unhoused precious brothers and sisters. If you really want to speak to the issues, be on the edge of trying to gain access of workers with a living wage. Then I wouldn't have no ground.
That's right.
You see? So they think that but people say, well, it's just a personal thing. It's just a vanity thing. please. I just turned 70 years old. The last thing I want to do is be wrestling with the issues in the American empire that have to do with just how sick and indifferent and callous our elites are when it comes to poor people and working people. But I got to be true to one's calling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. West, you just touched on something about teaching in the prison for the last 41 years. Yeah. You know, you obviously teach at a Ivy League. You have an Ivy League background. Teach at Ivy League at Princeton University. Can you speak a little bit, because I follow your entire career, and you mentioned it earlier about servant leadership. What does that mean, and why should we be looking for that in any elected official? How you're using your skill in an area that most would not.
Yes, indeed. And then to get this blessing to see, I know you were kind enough to give me that long ride. Was it from Iowa to Chicago?
Yes, sir.
The days we were out there with Brother Bernie and others. But I want to put this in context. You see, that each and every one of us, we are great to the degree to which we're true to the greatness that's been put inside of us. You see, so that the love of mom and dad, the love of Shiloh, Reverend Cook, the love of Deacon Hinton, and then get to the music. See, my life was inseparable from the love of Curtis Mayfield and Donny Hathaway and Aretha, the love of Phyllis Hyman. These people made a difference in my life. The Whispers, the Delphonics, and Enchantment. And so these are not just entertainers. I don't exist without that flow of love. Now, then the question becomes, what are you going to do with the love? Well, I like to spend time with books and libraries and things. I like to read so that I want to give in my own way. If I could sing like Marvin Gaye, I would be singing. But I try to read like Du Bois. I try to read like Toni Morrison. I got to work relative to my own gifts. And then I recognize, lo and behold, I come from a great black people. There's no other people in 400 years who've been so chronically hated and yet taught the world so much about love. No other people. John Coltrane's Love Supreme, Toni Morrison's Beloved, James Baldwin's Love, Soak Essays, and we ain't got the Stevie Wonder Love in Need of Love. What is it about these people who terrorized for 400 years but don't form a black version of the Ku Klux Klan? You see, that continually call for the freedom of everybody. That's a spiritual and a moral discipline that the whole world takes notice of.
Who never tried to overthrow the government.
Who never tried to overthrow the government the way in which
they did on
the right
January
wing
6th.
gangsters did. You see, now, and of course, there's a sense in which we had good reason to overthrow the government.
That's right.
If you're going to put my mama under slavery, I'm going to be part of a group that overthrows the government because when you love your mama, you hate the fact she's being treated unjustly.
That's right.
That's why I love the Frederick Douglasses and the Malcolm X's and the Black Panther Party and so many others, right? Now, at the same time, I'm a revolutionary Christian, which means what? Which means that my conception of greatness is not Alexander the Great, gangster who involved in conquest and domination and subjugation. That's America. See, when Trump say great, what he means is conquest, domination, marginalization. When I say great, I'm talking about Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm talking about Martin King. I'm talking about Marcus Garvey. What are they talking about? Trying to ensure they create orders in which everybody's treated with dignity. Now, that's a high, high standard. That's like trying to pick up the saxophone and listen to John Coltrane. That standard's going to hurt you because it's so high. But you know what the standards are. And the crucial point is, how do you pass it on to the younger generation? And the only way you pass it on, my dear sister, is by example. By example.
What do you think?
Part of the problem these days, we got too many black leaders who are no longer on the love train, they're on the gravy train.
Ooh, they about the money.
It's about
their money.
the Benjamins, Wu-Tang Clan, Cream.
Cash rules everything around me.
But it don't have to rule me. Rule everything around me.
That's right.
That's the genius from Staten Island, right?
That's right.
That's real. The highest standards that we set are our black musicians. Black musicians are the vanguard of the black freedom struggle because it's in black music that black people experience a foretaste of the freedom that we want. The anthem of my brothers in prison for 41 years. It could be in Greensville and Poughkeepsie. It could be in Sing Sing. I've taught in Rawway. I've taught in Garden City. What's the anthem? Zoom by the Commodores. Freedom Dreams. I like to get away. Well, I like to get away. What you want to do? To get some distance from all these lies, this suffering, all of this pain, all these wounds and scars. And what you gonna do with it? I'm gonna make it better for everybody else, not just myself. And to be on the gravy train is to be in it just for yourself and forget about what your grandmama did for you. Forget about what your partner did for you or your companion did for you. Or even when your child looks at you and says, who are you really, Daddy? Who are you really, Mama? Are you really giving? That's the greatness. In the biblical, he or she is greatest among you will be your servant. What does it mean to serve? And of course, the crucial challenge there is, and this is where it gets really very funky, and we got to bring in Bootsy and Clinton and the greatest of them all, James Brown, because you see, when you niggerize a people, a dignified African people, you teach them that they're less beautiful, they're less intelligent, they're less moral, but you keep them fearful. You know that line in James Baldwin, that letter to his nephew in Fire Next Time? He said, don't, be afraid. I heard in Shiloh Baptist Church, don't be afraid. Martin Luther King used to say what? I'd rather be dead than afraid. Mary Ellen Pleasant. Y'all know Mary Ellen Pleasant, the black sister in California, who was a multimillionaire that gave John Brown, the white brother who died for black people, gave him $600,000 in 1856. He had the note from Mary in his pocket when he was executed. And she was beginning every presentation. I'd rather be a corpse than a coward. You got to break the back of fear. Too many of our black people, but especially our leaders, those the great Glenn Ford called misleadership. They scared. They don't want to tell the truth about the suffering in the hood. They don't want to tell the truth about the mass incarceration. They don't want to tell the truth about the decrepit schools and indecent housing and not enough Medicare for everybody. They scared. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
That absolutely. And so when I hear, Brother Biden, I love how you push Biden.
Thank you, sir.
You see, and it's in love because you're loving the people.
That's right.
Right.
If you love the people, you free. You got to be a free black person. I'm a Jesus-loving free black man, but Malcolm X is a Allah-loving black man. I don't exist without Malcolm. Bell Hooks was a Buddhist. I don't exist without Bell Hooks. C.L.R. James was an atheist, but he's a free black man. I don't exist without him. But how do you break the back of fear? Now, you got somebody like Brother Biden talking about, America's not a racist country.
Yeah, right.
Get off the crack pipe, brother.
It bothers me more when I hear black people say that. When I hear the vice president say that.
Sister Kamala come right back.
Tim Scott.
I say, Sister Kamala, all that love, black love you got in California, and you went to Howard University, and she's my AKA sister. You know that that's not true. Have enough courage to break the back of fear to tell the truth about just how racist the country is. Right. Then here come Clyburn. It's not a racist country. They just have racist patches. Come on, brother. You in SNCC in the 1960s? What happens? They become so well adjusted to injustice and well adapted to indifference that what I call is the peacock mentality. And this is what happens with being on the gravy train. They walk around strutting. Look at me. I'm at the top. I'm a black face in a high place. And I can hear my grandmama saying peacock strut because they can't fly. Oh, we are people of eagles. That's what we black folk at our best. Now, I ain't saying that that's every black person. We got some black thugs and black gangsters, and I got a whole lot of gangster in me. I got a whole lot of thug in me. Ain't no doubt about it.
I was going to ask, when you talk about Biden and you see the amount of support that a lot of our community gives him, what is your thoughts on with all the things that you just said and all the things that he put us through? How you feel about that, and what's your biggest hurdle with making sure that those people that supported Biden and with all the effects that he's done to us support you?
Well, one is that I do recognize that we black folk have always been between a rock and a hard place. Henry Highland Garnett gave that famous speech of 1837 in Philadelphia where he said, black people must never confuse our situation with that of the Israelites in the Hebrew scripture. For us, Pharaoh is on both sides of the bloody Red Sea. That's real. So that's the fear too, you see. So Biden and the Democratic Party can just say, if you don't opt for me, and I ain't done nothing about mass incarceration, 39% of our black children still living in poverty, I ain't done that. I haven't focused on it, but Trump is worse. Mm-hmm. Trump is worse. Every 4 years, Republicans are worse. Yeah. Republicans are worse, and it's true. So you say, oh, between a rock and a hard, but wait a minute, we got to reach the point where we say, we got to speak our truth. And we got to understand we're between a rock and a hard place. That's true. Mm-hmm. And what happened in that convention in 1837, somebody? We have no way out. Somebody sang a song. Somebody tell a story about the love of your child and the love of your loved one. That's the only thing keeps black folk going. Think about Jim Crow, South Carolina, where you've come from, brother. Is that right, Charles?
That's right, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's Dizzy Gillespie. That's James Brown.
Yes, sir.
That's South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And what was it about South Carolina? Just like Mississippi, the only two states that had a majority of black people. What does that mean? That meant that the level of terror and trauma against this brother's family was even more intense. Why? Because they were scared. They said these black folk get together, they might want to create a decent society for them, and a decent society for them means we're going to have to give up some power, give up some resources, give up something. You see? And unfortunately, we're living in such a moment of spiritual decay, not just in the nation, but in black America. We just got too many black folk who are scared and fearful and intimidated and don't want to speak the truth.
When you hear allies, well, I guess allies of yours like AOC say Cornel West is too big of a risk because of the Electoral College and the fact you may take some of those votes. What do you think of people like that? Because they're progressive. Shouldn't they want these issues on the ticket? Shouldn't they want somebody like you on the ticket bringing up these issues?
Right. No, it's true. And that's a wonderful question, though, because you've got a progressive slice in the Democratic Party. Now, I was with Brother Bernie, as my dear sister knows, twice. They treated him badly. They treated him unjustly. They rigged the whole thing. You had Hillary Clinton and the others were going to ensure that he did not win no matter what. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So at the core of the Democratic Party is a rot. And that rottenness is corporate greed. And they tied to big money, big donors, big benefactors. Can't be a member of the Democratic Party and win without access to big money. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm as broke as the Ten Commandments financially. Personally, collectively, and I don't mind, because somewhere I read, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all the rest of the things will be added. So when I hear AOC, I say, okay, she's part of that progressive small slice of the Democratic Party, but she's giving in to the perceptions of the corporate wing of that party. And the corporate wing says over and over again, all we have is two parties. It's freaking frack. Mm-hmm. It's Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Mm-hmm. There is a difference domestically, but not a whole lot of difference in terms of foreign policy. You ask Palestinian brothers on the West Bank, when they got the various bombs coming at them, when 550 Palestinian children are killed in 50 days. Mm-hmm. Somewhere I read or somewhere I heard in Vacation Bible School in Shiloh Baptist Church, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red or yellow, black or white. They are precious in his sight. So a Palestinian child has exactly the same value as a precious Jewish child. And a precious Jewish child has exactly the same value as a precious black or red or indigenous or anywhere else, Ethiopian, Lithuanian, and so forth. And you ask the black politician, how come you won't say a mumbling word about the Palestinians undergoing that kind of suffering? They're on the gravy train. They've adjusted themselves. So AOC is on the progressive side of the Democratic Party. But she, at the same time, now has become so well adjusted to the core of the Democratic Party. And she can change. I mean, and I'm, as a Christian, I try to love everybody. So everybody.
Well, right. Dr. West, I want to follow up on that, because you are right. The progressive movement, it started out, with everybody excited. It happened well before Bernie Sanders, but everybody was feel the burn. And now that burn is kind of fizzled out because there is a current split between those that still support the squad and then those who are now calling them the fraud squad because they have switched. So how do we, where's the accountability? a lot of folks feel that Black people should be involved in the progressive movement. I don't think we have the leadership that it needs as far as those who are making the decisions at the top, not just the faces. But how do we hold people like AOC accountable that said, you know, and I'm just using her for example, piggybacking off Charlamagne's question, but what do we do for those that said, no, we're going to push the line, we're going to go hard, and then they flip?
Yeah, we just got to tell the truth. Tell the truth in humility. And the truth is a jagged edge in Janet's face, which is to say it has a number of different dimensions to it. It comes back at us and it goes at others. No one of us have a monopoly on truth.
That's right.
Truth is bigger. Mm-hmm. Justice is bigger. Beauty's bigger. Love is bigger. But we got to be honest. We got to be candid. Now, for example, if AOC was doing something important on the local level, if she was dealing with housing evictions, and I'm in solidarity with folk dealing with all this gentrification, all of this land grab and power grab, and they wanted to do something within the neighborhood, I'd be there with her. Because it ain't about her, it ain't about me, it's about the people suffering. But when it comes to presidential politics, and people are so quick to endorse without leverage, I mean, it's amazing to me that people say, you know, Brother West, you have a chance of turning the whole election. I told my wife, now how in the world, just 3 months ago, I'll wake up and I'm listening to Aretha. Ain't nobody thinking about me. 3 months later, I got the power to turn the whole election.
Yeah, that means somebody not doing something right.
You ain't lying.
That's right.
You got this Black Congressional Caucus been in there all that time, and I'm out there lecturing and writing and so forth and so on. And then all of a sudden, I got this leverage. But I can tell you one thing, that they're going to have to put me in the grave before I sell out Black people, because I ain't selling out my mama. Oh, I'm not selling out my daddy. No, they were always greater than me. Greater in love, greater in wisdom, you see. So when I have leverage, I don't look at the Black community the way my brother Tavis Smiley says so many other politicians do, as some political calculation. No, not at all. These are the people that love me into my sanity, into my dignity, you see. It's like me giving up Curtis Mayfield and opting for the Beach Boys. I'm not going to do it. I ain't got nothing against Beach Boys, but it ain't my thing.
That's right.
Ain't my thing.
That's right.
No.
Doc-
I'm down and out.
Dr. West?
I want to hear some Anita Baker. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Oh, yes.
Dr. West, speaking of truth telling, I just have to say it. You know, Bernard Sanders also endorsed Joe Biden. He was one of the first to endorse Joe Biden, and many would argue that he did that without leverage as well. And that was before you got on the ballot. I would hope that if you got on the ballot first, he would support you like you supported him. But what are your thoughts on him kind of jumping out there immediately?
Yeah, you know, I love the brother, and you know, even in love, people have deep disagreements about these things. But I think, again, he's fearful of the neo-fascism of Trump, and he just sees that somehow Biden. See, part of the problem is that people look at Biden, they don't really want to tell the full truth. If you say, okay, the Trump doesn't even have a bar, he's below the ground, because he just gangster dead up. It's always said he was a gangster, so it's not a surprise. You know what I mean? And he's been obsessed with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. And it looks like he might get caught, but we don't know. We don't know. Most Black folk would have done 1/100th of what he did.
Oh, come on.
And end up in jail. I got my dear brother Mark Ridley Thomas in L.A., the most powerful Black politician who has been convicted for nothing under Biden's Justice Department, you see. So I understand this criminal justice system when it comes to Black folk, you see. And so what happens is Biden is cast as being now, he's created the best economy that we can get. And when we leave this place, we're going to see homeless brothers and sisters right around the corner. We leave this place, we know the children don't have what they ought. Workers don't have what. Is this the best that we can get? You're going to tell that lie to the people just for Biden to win so we can push back fascism? All that means is fascism is coming. Because if the only opposition to fascism are lies, then sooner or later fascism is going to take over.
Right. That's right.
So every Democratic administration becomes a postponement of it.
Damn.
But no, black folk, when Frederick Douglass had to choose between two slaveholders, Henry Clay and James Polk in 1844, what did he do? He became a member of the Liberty Party. He said, I can't deal with it. When he came, and of course the Republican Party was a third party. That was Lincoln. And what did Lincoln say in the first inauguration? I will compromise and allow for the Union and thereby permit the South to hold slaves in perpetuity. And what did the great Frederick Douglass say? He said, Lincoln, you ain't nothing but a slave hound from Illinois. He told the truth. You shouldn't alienate the president because you're not going to have access. These are slaveholders. We talking about precious folk who are enslaved.
That's right.
This ain't no political game to make sure your career can move X and Y. And if black folk had that kind of careers mentality in the past, we still be enslaved. We still be Jim Crow. We still be Jane Crow. And we still Jim Crow and Jane Crow. It's just now Jim Crow and Jane Crow Jr. Senior, American apartheid, broken the back with Martin King and Fannie Lou and Stokely Carmichael and Diane Nash and the others. But we got Jim Crow Jr. And yet, we just don't have enough folk who are willing to tell the truth. But again, we fall back with our musicians, the Gil Scott-Herons and Nina Simone's. They were able to speak from the depths of who they were. That's what our blues is about. What is the blues? It's about catastrophe, lyrically expressed and artistically transfigured. Nobody loves me but my mama, and she might be jiving too. That's catastrophic. That's the king of the blues out of Mississippi, B.B. Strange Fruit. You all know Strange Fruit from Genius. Billie Holiday. What is Strange Fruit? It ain't about a problem. It's about a catastrophe. We need to have political leaders who begin like the musicians with catastrophe. We ain't got no race problem in America. We never had a race problem in America. We've had catastrophes visited on black people. And how do you fortify yourself in the face of catastrophe? First fortification is spiritually. You can have the best analysis in the world. If you're scared, you're not a good comrade because you're not reliable. You got to have your spirit intact. Then the next thing you need a sense of time so you don't fall into despair. Afro-pessimism is very popular these days, isn't it? Not just in the academy, across the board. Because we got good reason to be pessimistic. We got good reason to be pessimistic for 400 years.
That's right.
But there's a difference between retail pessimism and wholesale pessimism. We all ought to be retail pessimistic. We going to all these funerals and dealing with all of these wounds and scars. But the last word is joy. The last word is love. The last word is freedom. The last word is improvisation. How you going to be flexible and fluid to keep this tradition alive that's been bequeathed to you under the most vicious circumstances? Ooh, what a people we are. People say, oh, Brother West, you just chauvinistic. You always talking about black this and black. I'm not talking about blackness. I'm talking about the black people who chose love and joy and freedom and willing to live and die. That's what's kept us going.
That's right.
That's that love train that OJ's talking about, all that caravan of love that the Isley Brothers was singing about. Not just songs. This was connected. It's in your heart. If I were to look in each one of your souls, I'd see your grandmamas and your granddaddies and your mamas and your daddies and your aunts and your uncles and your coaches and your partners helping you get along.
That's right.
And if I were to look in your friends and your kids, I would see you in there. I look at our dear sisters. I know you on the screen, but you right here with us in a fundamental way. I see the same thing inside of you. That's what we got to be true to. That's what our musicians, at their best, are true to.
I love the disruption you causing, and you know you're a threat when everybody is saying you're going to be a threat. But I also see the media; they're not wasting no time attacking you because now they're saying you owe $500,000 in taxes, and they're trying to say it's hypocrisy on your part because you spent so much of your life advocating for higher taxes on the wealthy. I'm like, I ain't never heard any of this about Dr. Cornel West before, but now all of a sudden he's running for president.
Everything's coming out the woodwork.
Here it is go.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I mean, I told you before, I got so much gangster in me. I was a gangster before I met Jesus, and I ain't nothing but a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities. So that there's a whole lot of things. Anytime you shine, you shine a flashlight under somebody's clothes, you're going to find all kind of mess because that's what it is to be human. But the thing is, one, you don't want to lie about it. You want to tell the truth. I don't see what upsets when they lie about my kids. That's what I can't stand. They lying about my kids because I take care of my kids. I love my kids. I give them everything I got. My wife would be the first one to do. But so they start lying on my kids, and you can imagine. Because I'm a Christian, not a pacifist. They start lying on my mama, even though she in the grave. Hey, we in a whole different thing. That's how I was raised and reared. I'm serious. That love inside of me is such. I'll go down. I go to the grave for that.
And you already told them you broke. So.
And I've been broke. I've been telling absolutely. You ain't lying, my brother. You ain't lying. That's the truth. And it's partly because, I do like to give to loved ones and others too. But I take responsibility for it too. But it don't make no difference to me. What's interesting is, you want to use it as a distraction. Why don't you keep the focus on the suffering that I'm highlighting?
That's right. That's right.
Yep, that's right.
Go to Harlem, go to Brooklyn, go to South Central LA, go to South Side Chicago. That's what I'm talking about. Go to the white poor sections in Appalachia. Go to the barrio. Go to indigenous peoples on reservations. Go to the West Bank in Palestine. Go to Belgian Congo. Go to the landless peasants in Brazil. That's what I'm concerned about. But they used to do the same thing. The Supreme Court put Martin in jail for tax evasion.
That's right.
Now, Martin is a tax evader in the same way that I'm a Norwegian. And I ain't got nothing against the Norwegians, but I ain't no Norwegian. I can tell you that right now. So this is just a matter of trying to hit you below the belt and keep the distraction. But the beautiful thing is Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest of all free black men. We got to give Honorable Elijah Muhammad tremendous present because he produced two of the freest black men, probably the two freest black men of the 20th century, Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali.
3. Don't forget Mr. Farrakhan.
Well, that's true, too. Now, Ms. Louis Farrakhan's are free. You're absolutely right. And he's very much tied to Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Right. Definitely. But I think even our dear brother minister, he would probably say, Lord, in relation to Muhammad Ali and Malcolm, who was his teacher, even as they had to break, who was his teacher. And the love, of course, was a love connection that was very, very deep and very, very tormented, that he might be one of the first to say, well, that first wave of Muhammad Ali and Malcolm, because I'm a son of Malcolm X. Hakeem Mahabudi is a son. Mary Barack, Sonia Sanchez is a daughter, and Nikki Giovanni. It goes on and on. And in that sense, the Minister Louis Farrakhan is a kind of son of Malcolm in that way, you see. But what Muhammad Ali do? Muhammad Ali, rope-a-dope. You got to get your timing right. That's what the jazz musicians say, right? You got to time it in such a way that when it's time to swing, make sure it's effective. Make sure it's got love in it, and make sure it has impact. See, that's the history of a great people. That's why we wounded healers at our best. All the wounds we got, we can still heal, not just hurt each other. You see, and that's why we joy spreaders. Who brought the world more joy? Dizzy Gillespie, or Louis Armstrong, or Richard Pryor, all of them geniuses, not just entertainers. They entertain us through the white normative gaze. Oh, look how funny. Look how they dance so well. They sing so beautiful. No, These are the most precious human beings of artistic and spiritual greatness who are creating ways of being in the world in the face of chronic hatred and tear and trauma and sorrow.
That's right.
That's who we are at our best. Yeah.
You mentioned in one of your interviews how we should be taking notice to all of these strikes going on. So a moment ago you said, the Democrats are saying, hey, all is well, the economy is well. Break down to the people how you talked about, it can't be going too well because people are striking everywhere.
Isn't that the truth? Thank God Almighty at Amazon, Brother Chris. I thought we were going to have a strike at UPS, but they called it off the last minute and got a deal. But you got to continually engage because, see, class struggle is inescapable in the capitalist society. You have to be very honest about that. And the end and aim is always to squeeze from the worker what you can to make the profits as high as you can. You got banks right here in New York that's generating billions and billions and billions of dollars and stand in the pockets of the well-to-do. What, we got 3 individuals in the country that has wealth equivalent to 160 million citizens. 3 people. 3 people. That's a Keith Sweat moment. Something just ain't right. Ridiculous. Same is true with Cop City. Who's supporting Cop City? Democrats and Republicans. Black politicians down in Atlanta too. What's happening? What is Cop City? The militarization of an already militarized police force. To do what? To make sure that on the chocolate side of town, you're not engaging in the kind of protecting service that you ought to. It's suppress. It's contain, so it doesn't spill over to the other sections of town. Treat them where you want to. Look at our dear brother. We're going to kick off the campaign in Mississippi with Emmett Till Day, on August 25 and 26. And we got Brother Jenkins and Brother Parker, Brother Michael and Brother Eddie. Y'all heard about that case. The 2 who have been so brutalized and sexually assaulted down in Mississippi. And the officers just pleaded guilty. My dear brother Malik Shabazz just told me about they just pleaded guilty. But we're going to be down there with those brothers. Why? Because that's where we begin. And it's just 2 hours from Delta, Mississippi. That's where the blues comes from. That's Robert Johnson, Hellhound on my trail. That's Son House. Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey. You see, that's that. The 20th century was the most barbaric century of recorded time. Over 160 million people killed in wars and things. And the greatest breakthrough of the 20th century was black music.
How did you feel? Did you hear Meek Mill say recently that record labels pay artists more to rap about negativity?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, the 3 albums that I did, I was blessed to work with Prince and Gerald Levert and Talib Kweli and Jill Scott and Rod Digger and a whole host of KRS-One and so forth. And my album, Never Forget, came out 2007. And we went to a variety of different labels, and they said, we don't want this political crap. We want G-string music.
G-string music. God,
that's the language they use.
That's somebody from a label said that?
Oh, yeah.
What label? Do you remember the label?
Clive Davis and them.
Wow.
That's who it was.
Wow.
That's who it was. And I said to myself, I didn't say it because I just listened and just taking it in. Well, actually, I said something like, I don't have anything against G-string. Because I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Puritan. You know what I mean?
Love a good G-string.
Orgasm has its role and has its place. I don't think we ought to just hook up with orgasm machines for the rest of our lives and just continually. No, stop and have a little conversation.
Right.
Stop and have some relation. But when you fetishize that in relation to black people, that's nothing but white supremacy in the musical context, you see. Because Gil Scott-Heron ain't crap. Curtis Mayfield ain't crap. Fight the power of both P.E., Public Enemy, and the Isley Brothers. That's not crap at all. Now, Marvin Gaye is saying what's going on and let's get it on. That's part of life. Sometimes you need to get it on. Other times you got to find out what's going on. And you got to prepare yourself spiritually, politically, and so forth. But there's no doubt that the spiritual warfare against the younger generation that tries to dumb down the music. I was blessed to write a song with the one and only, the genius Bootsy Collins. We wrote a song called Freedom, F-R-E-D-U-M. The freedom to dumb down the music, to flatten it out, to don't want the stories and the narratives that would tease out the courage and the vision, but just titillation and stimulation, titillation and stimulation. And even in our churches these days, you got 7-11 songs, which is the songs with 7 words and you sing it 11 times. Well, I grew up in a church where we had stories in the song. That's James Cleveland. This too shall pass. God has smiled on me. Jesus is the best thing that happened to me. You got that from Gladys and Jim Witherly. But it had stories in it. What is it about stories? Drama. What does drama do? Keep you moving on.
That's right.
Keep on keeping on, as Curtis said. Titillation and stimulation, it doesn't keep you keeping on.
What, Dr. West, do you think hip-hop has evolved in its 50 years?
It has devolved.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's devolved. Oh, shoot, ain't no doubt about it. I mean, your John Coltrane of hip-hop for me is Rakim. Rakim set a standard so high, it's hard for a lot of young folk these days to even come close to. Now, you still got geniuses like Jay-Z and Kanye's a genius. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about Kanye. He's not my cousin, but I love him. He's just wrong about a whole lot of other things. Artistically, the brother's a genius.
Mm-hmm.
He set some high standards. He knew what the standards of Biggie and Tupac and others. J. Cole and the others are quite extraordinary.
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick.
Oh, Kendrick now.
Gotta put the sister Rhapsody in there.
It's Rhapsody is just magnificent. I had it on my radio show. That's true. So there's always going to be a cloud of witnesses, especially with black people, because we so unpredictable in what's coming at us, to hold up the blood-stained banner of the highest levels of creativity and integrity. But it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That's the problem. You think about somebody like Gladys Knight. Now, Gladys Knight got one of the deepest, coldest voices of the 20th century, but Aretha overshadows her because she happened to come at a time where Aretha is there. If Aretha hadn't been there, she and Chaka Khan and Phyllis Hyman would have been, but the standards were so high.
Mm-hmm.
Al Green was the same way. Al Green is as deep as they get. But he got Donny Hathaway, Curtis, and others setting such high standards that he's up there. Ain't no doubt about it. Whereas these days, who is the Curtis Mayfield of the younger generation? It's out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know it. I don't know everything about black folk at all.
Oh,
If you do win, what would that do for our community, you think?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I told my blessed wife again, I said that I'm not going to the White House until everybody has a house.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so it's going to be spiritual servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning what? Then we're going to talk about abolition. We're going to bring back troops, 800 military units around the world. America doesn't have to be an empire forcing every nation to succumb to its domination. America would be a nation among nations. We spend 57 cents for every dollar on military. We could be using that to wipe out poverty. We can be using that for jobs with a living wage. We can be using that for Medicare for all and so forth. So it's going to be a new day in that sense. Now, you can imagine that, very realistically, that, when you bring that kind of black musical sensibility concerned with catastrophe, swing, and improvisation, grounded with a courage and a love, they're going to try to crush you like a cockroach.
You ready for that?
Oh, I've been ready for that all my life.
That's right.
Black love is a crime in a white supremacist world. Anybody who falls in love with black people will be criminalized in a white supremacist
We've
world.
seen it happen so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Every major black leader we had who fell in love with us,
That's right.
criminalized, character assassination, literal assassination, marginalization, incarceration, Mumia Abu-Jamal, we can go on and on, Deruba, so many of the political, Sister Shakur Asada and others.
Would you put JFK in that?
JFK. No, I wouldn't put JFK.
Okay.
I love my Irish brothers and sisters, but no, JFK is, he and Robert Kennedy, who was the father of RFK Jr., God bless him, they're the ones that put the FBI surveillance on Martin and kept track of it and tried to drive Martin to suicide. You see, I love Martin too much to forget that. I don't forget those kind of things. You know what I mean? So that, now there are some white brothers and sisters who do meet the challenge. John Brown would be one.
Because some people say that about JFK, he got assassinated because he gave that speech from the White House about racism and because he would entertain MLK Jr.
Oh, I see the point. No, I see what you're saying. In terms of the CIA and foreign policy, he was cutting against the grain.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Very much so. But when I was thinking about black love, I was thinking about the loving of black folk. You see, JFK, he was not a Dorothy Day. Dorothy Day was a white Catholic sister who had a profound love of black people and peoples of color, poor white peoples and so forth. JFK is of a different ilk in that regard. He had some positive things because everybody's who they are, not somebody else. See, I don't believe in just trashing people just because they don't have X or Y or don't agree with me. Everybody can be a force for good, but they don't have to lie about it. They don't have to just got to be themselves.
That's right.
Try to keep being and doing what God has called them to do. Not just invoke God just as a Christian here. What God has called them to do, and what God has called each one of us to do, is equal.
That's right.
It's the brother and sister on the corner who's helping the precious young people. They are as significant as anything that we are doing. We might have a little bit more cash flow, whether you get a chance to spend it or not, you can give it to debts and so forth. But that's what it is to be a human being of dignity made in the image and likeness of God, for me.
That's right.
I just got a couple more questions.
Sure.
It's like kind of two-part question. I want to know what do you think Republicans are getting right, and what are they getting wrong? What do you think Democrats are getting right? What do you think they're getting wrong?
Yeah, I think the Republicans get one thing right, and that is they've had historically in the last 50 years a certain fear of centralized government undermining liberties. Now, they've given that up recently because the neo-fascists have taken over. Because for me, you see, I believe in workers' control. I have a suspicion of government, too, and it's partly because of the kind of surveillance and COINTELPRO and the ways in which government has access to powers of surveillance of each and every one of us. So that I'm deeply tied to personal liberties. I'm deeply tied to individual rights. I think people ought to be able to make their own decisions. It could be women having control over their bodies. It could be gay brothers like James Baldwin, or lesbian sisters like Audre Lorde, or trans or anybody. Individual liberties are important, but they are important alongside overcoming structures of domination in the economy, in discrimination, in the workplace. What do the Democrats get right? The Democrats get right the defense of rights of women and gay brothers and lesbian sisters and trans. They've been decent on that when pushed.
You say black, though.
Well, neither one of them are fundamentally committed to defending black folk.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way in God's heaven that a person that came down from Mars and looked at the conditions of black people could conclude that anybody who's been ruling has been concerned about black people, has made it a priority. Going to the prisons. What's going on? This is a sick place. Los Angeles got 45,000 homeless, 9% black, 40% of them black. That ain't no accident. That's white supremacy at work at its deepest level. It's inseparable from the economy. It's inseparable from education. It's inseparable from the spiritual condition of black people. We don't love ourselves, affirm ourselves, and so forth. But it means to me that neither one of these parties has ever made it a priority to empower black people.
And see, with that said, I don't understand how come the Green Party isn't able to make more of an impact, because they are a viable alternative to this two-party system that people claim to be sick of.
Well, part of it is the Green Party itself has never made it a major priority to empower black people either. Am I telling the truth, my sister? Absolutely. They're concerned about the environment, rightly so. They're concerned about capitalism, rightly so. They're concerned about patriarchy, rightly so. Patriarchy in relation to black sisters, brown sisters, indigenous sisters, Middle Eastern sisters, and so forth. Yes, in principle, but not a priority. You see, not a priority, you see. And so those of us who are improvisational and moving from one context to the next, you had to be true to what's inside of you. That's all. You just have to be true. It would be like James Brown, playing the funk in the Apollo and go to Carnegie Hall and start playing Lawrence Welk. He's not going to do that. He's true to himself.
That's right.
The funk is going to be as funky in Carnegie Hall as it's going to be in the Apollo.
That's right.
That's what we need. We need politicians. We need black professionals like that, not just wearing the mask and trying to get through based on their careers and the next opportunity they can seize.
It's going to be interesting to see if Senator Joe Manchin runs for president, because they say he's going to run. He might run for president, because I feel like they would still have more smoke for you than they would for him, but they should have more smoke for him because He's a politician. He's in bed with them. You don't owe these people nothing.
That's true, but it makes me freer if I have the courage to use that freedom. 'Cause look at Brother Manchin now. Here's somebody who could stop the passage of a voting rights bill. Now,
Yes,
it was
did.
black women especially, but black folk who pushed Biden across the finish line. But he can't sit down and make a deal with Manchin. Manchin stops voting rights for black people. That's about as basic. You're talking about defending democracy, and you defending democracy against the gangster Trump. But when it comes to voting rights for black people, that's not defending democracy either? Well, no, that's an issue that's important, but that's secondary and tertiary. But when it comes to the debt ceiling, he can sit down and make a deal with Manchin. He got his pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
He got his money.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the double standard, the level of hypocrisy, that's what upsets me about the Democratic Party. Because the kind of gangster sensibility of the Republicans, we assume that's the case. You know, they've got a long history of white supremacists running things, explicit white supremacists. Democrats act as if they on the cutting edge and listening to Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech every day. Every day. Wake up in the morning. No. When it comes to treating these black folk, but we should say this, though, and this is where the class issue comes in, that when it comes to the black middle class and the black bourgeoisie, see, they do have access to status and position.
Yes, they do.
They really do. And all of us know, and this is the thing that upsets me, that if it were the precious children of the black middle classes who are undergoing mass incarceration in the last 40 years, as opposed to the precious black poor and working class youth, we'd have different kind of policy.
Yes,
Let the Jack and Jill brothers and sisters go to jail with the same level of intensity as Precious Jamal and Letitia on the block.
That's right.
Our church leadership would be different. See, when I grew up in Shiloh Baptist Church with the Black Panther Party right next door, we had prison ministry. It was as strong as the building fund. These days, it's the opposite. The building fund gets all the money. And I teach in the prisons, where are the black churches in the prisons? You can hardly find them. You find a Nation of Islam there. I find some Catholic nuns who are vanilla there. Because the churches, they don't have strong prison ministries. But what did Jesus hear? What was he crucified for? He went into the temple and did what? Ran out the money changers.
Turned over the tables.
Turned over the tables. 400 Roman troops in the biggest edifice east of Rome. That's what Jesus ran them out. The disciples got scared. Peter denied him 3 times. But no, these days for us, you know, we got churches who claim they follow Jesus but can't wait to be on Pontius Pilate's payroll.
You got to flip them tables.
Oh, you got to know how to act that. And he didn't flip the tables because he hated the poor, rich people. He hated greed. He hated indifference and callousness toward precious poor folk and ended up on that cross. And for Christians, of course, the cross is not something you talk about. It's something you die on.
No, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yes. You remember Martin King in that paddy wagon going to Reedsville prison 4.5 hours with a German Shepherd? And only he and the German Shepherd in the dark. Daddy King told me his father, he said, when Martin got out, Brother West, he couldn't walk a straight line. And all he could say is, this is the cross we must bear for the freedom of our people. Daddy King said, that's my son. That's what I put in him. Even when I disagree with him, I can feel the love. He's as real as a heart attack. That's Martin. And Martin had his faults and foibles, didn't he? He's a human being like everybody else. Like everybody else. Malcolm was the same way. Fannie Lou was the same way. Nameless folk who we don't even remember were like that in raising their kids in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and so. What part of the country you from, my brother?
I'm from New York.
Dominican.
Oh,
I'm from Queens.
Yeah, from Queens. Oh, brother, you got a jump start in life. You come out of Queens like that. Absolutely. Same tradition. Same blood, sweat, and tears, service, passing it on. And the question becomes, what do we do with it?
That's right.
We can lose it. We can lose it. Let's be honest about it. We can lose it now. No doubt about it.
How do they support your campaign, brother?
Well, that's a good question, though, man. We got the what's the thing, though, babe?
CornelWest24.org.
.org.
Yeah, you can go there to donate, to volunteer, all of that. CornelWest24.org.
And we appreciate you, brother, for joining us this morning.
No, but you all stay strong, because as I said, this is consecrated space, though, man. Speak people who come through here, the musicians, the artists, the leaders. Yesterday you had the brothers wrestling with the ghetto chef and the food, and the brothers from the prisons and things. This is the space. This is like the ring shout place, you know. And under slavery, it was against the law for us to read and write. It was against the law for us to worship God without white supervision. We had to steal away and hold a hand in a ring shout, and then just raise a beautiful song, "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." They consecrated that space where they could be free in their deep African black selves. Well, so it is here on 55th Street.
All right.
2023.
We call this the Black Mothership.
That's right.
Black Mothership.
That's right.
Ooh, now, is that Sun Ra or is that George Clinton and them?
George Clinton.
Oh, I hear
And ladies and gentlemen, it's Dr. Cornel West,
Yes, sir.
and it's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
In the morning.
The Breakfast Club.